Hello everybody. Today we are going to talk about some very interesting examples of the cards that were reprinted in 93-94 Old School Magic with different art. Sometimes erroneously, sometimes for the reason of the censorship. And mind you, we're not going to talk about some simple cases such as Fallen Empires cards having different art inside of the set, or the lovely Mishra's Factories having 4 different seasons. No, we're not going to talk about that. What we are going to talk about is the cards that had the art changed. So, the first case is very well known, and this is Serendipit. So, as you know, Serendipit, this is the original art for it by Anson Maddox, and I don't currently have the Arabian Nights copy. This is what we call 4 in white bordered, and these are relatively cheap, but still much more expensive and more desirable than the If art. So, as you know, this art belongs to If. As we have said, the frame is green because of that, but the casting cost is correct and the effects are also correct. I don't see people play this one very often, and it's much more desirable for people to have this particular art. And I find it maybe a little bit unfair because you all know the story of the Blue Hurricane from Summer Magic, which had basically the opposite effect. It is a green card which was printed with a blue frame. And Blue Hurricane is extremely desirable. It costs several $1,000s. Everybody wants it. But this one, even though it's exactly the same kind of misprint, I wouldn't even call it a misprint because, you know, it's a card that doesn't really exist in any other version inside of the same set in the same language. So anyway, people are not really fond of it. Anyway, I like both arts. Probably I would say that I also prefer the Anson Maddox art for Serendipit himself, but obviously we also like the If art as well. And I have talked to you about it. Remember, there is a figure in the background. The second case is Unholy Strength, and you can certainly see what is happening here. In 1995, in the 4th edition, this is, as far as it's known to me, the only case of censorship in Magic art. And sometimes, of course, cards were printed with different art. Sometimes, let's say, they had the names changed, and there were many different things going on. But this particular example is really interesting because the pentagram is removed. And, you know, this makes you think about different values that people had. And nowadays, you know, this year we had a very important case of censorship. And it didn't really touch old school magic. It didn't touch the biggest old school communities, except for the one most controversial probably card. But nevertheless, you see, this was done in order to prevent parents and teachers from thinking that children are involved in some kind of dark art and they're practicing some evil magic, something like that, and worship the Satan. So this is all, of course, this all seems a little bit funny and naive, but remember that, you know, nowadays we have got another case of censorship, and it was perfectly fine in the same 4th edition. I'm talking about the 4th edition here, to print a card that today was banned just a couple of months ago. Just think of that. I'm not here to, you know, engage in political debate and say whether it's right or wrong. I just want you to pay attention to this and maybe think a little bit about that, you know, how quickly everything changes. The third case is the Plateau. And there is a lot of stuff going on with this particular card. Obviously, this is the original. I've got the collector's edition here, and obviously this is the original art, printed in Alpha, Beta and Unlimited, but later on fixed, but not really fixed, but changed and revised. So there are always debates about which art people prefer, and you know, my taste also has changed. In the past I would have said that I preferred this one, but now probably I'm going to go for the original Plateau. The story is following. So Drew Tucker drew this art for Plateau, and when they wanted to reprint it for revised, they realized that the file was corrupted. The image file that was used for printing this particular card, they just couldn't use it. And as a result, they wanted to look for the original art, but Drew Tucker, and rescan it. But they discovered that the original piece of art was also nowhere to be found. And as a result, they had to use another one. And even though here it says Drew Tucker, this is actually incorrect. It is miscredited because this particular art was by Cornelius Brody. And the reason why it has some snow here is actually very interesting, because originally Wizards of the Coast wanted to print these duels, the original duels as we know them, in Ice Age. And Ice Age was already in development, and they had this particular snow-themed art for Ice Age. Notice the rider with some maybe spear, some weapon in here. Maybe you haven't noticed this either before, and they decided to use this particular file. I actually wonder whether the art for other duels that were never released but were planned for Ice Age was ever used. I haven't been able to find any information about that. But other than that, I think this is an interesting piece of trivia for you all. So this is it. Of course, if we talk about things like that, there are also some things to discuss. I mean, sometimes the mechanics were changed, and sometimes the artists were miscredited. I mean, it's not the only case where the artist is miscredited. And there is still a lot to explore. There are many things to talk about, and I will see you soon. Bye.